In 1995, a man's blood was found at a murder scene. His DNA was recovered from the victims. A bloody glove matched his hand. And he walked out of that courtroom a free man. Not because he was innocent, but because the people handling the evidence made mistake after catastrophic mistake. And that case is not even the worst example. Forensic science is supposed to be the thing that catches killers, the unshakable proof, the stuff that juries trust more than eyewitnesses, more than confessions, sometimes more than common sense. But what happens when the science gets sloppy, when the lab tech cuts corners, when the crime scene gets trampled, when the expert on the stand is making it up? Killers walk free. That's what happens. Today we're looking at the forensic failures that let guilty people escape justice. Real cases where the evidence was there, the answer was right in front of investigators, and human error destroyed it all. These aren't obscure technicalities. These are massive, gut-wrenching blunders. And the scariest part, some of these patterns are still happening in labs and crime scenes across the country right now. Let's get into it. June 12, 1994. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman are found murdered outside Nicole's Brentwood condo. The violence was extreme. Both victims had been stabbed multiple times. From the start, the physical evidence against O.J. Simpson was staggering. Blood drops at the crime scene matched his DNA. A bloody glove found behind his house matched one at the scene. His Ford Bronco had traces of blood from both victims and from Simpson himself. On paper, this case was a slam dunk. But LAPD criminalist Dennis Fung collected blood samples without changing gloves between items. Blood reference vials sat unrefrigerated in a hot van for hours. Detective Mark Furman, who found the glove at Simpson's estate, was later exposed for racist statements, torpedoing his credibility and, by extension, everything he touched at the scene. Defense attorney Barry Scheck spent days dismantling the evidence collection process. He didn't need to prove the evidence was planted. He just needed to prove it could have been contaminated. And the sloppy handling gave him everything he needed. The jury deliberated for under 4 hours. Not guilty. The lesson here isn't complicated. It doesn't matter how strong your evidence is, if you can't prove the chain of custody was clean. December 26, 1996, Patsy Ramsey calls 911 to report her 6-year-old daughter, JonBenet, missing from their Boulder, Colorado home. She says she found a ransom note on the staircase. What happened next is a textbook example of how not to process a crime scene. Boulder police arrived and, instead of securing the house, allowed friends, family, and a victim advocate to walk freely through the home. People sat on furniture, moved items, contaminated surfaces. Then, roughly 7 hours after police arrived, a detective told John Ramsey to search the house himself. He went to the basement. He found JonBenet's body in the wine cellar. He picked her up, carried her upstairs, and laid her on the floor near the Christmas tree. Any trace evidence, fibers, hair, DNA that might have been on or near the body was now compromised. The crime scene was destroyed by the very people supposed to protect it. Nearly 3 decades later, the case remains unsolved. Investigators have partial DNA from an unknown male found on JonBenet's clothing, but the early contamination has made it almost impossible to build a prosecutable case. Multiple grand juries, multiple suspects, 0 convictions. 1 morning of carelessness, that's all it took. This one isn't about a single mistake. It's about a man who turned forensic fraud into a career. Fred Zain worked as a serologist for the West Virginia State Police Crime Lab from 1977 to 1989, then moved to the Bexar County Medical Examiner's Office in Texas. During that time, he testified as an expert witness in hundreds of cases across multiple states. The problem? He was fabricating results, reporting blood type matches that didn't exist, overstating the certainty of hair and fiber analysis, presenting testimony that went far beyond what the actual science supported. In 1993, the West Virginia Supreme Court reviewed his work and found that Zain had committed systematic forensic fraud in virtually every case he handled. Their investigation concluded he had falsified results, withheld evidence, and lied under oath for over a decade. The fallout was enormous. At least 134 cases were referred for review. Several wrongfully convicted people were released from prison. But here's the other side of that coin. If Zain was faking evidence to get convictions, the real perpetrators in those cases were never properly investigated. Some of them are still out there. Zain was indicted on fraud charges, but died in 2002 before facing trial. The full scope of the damage he caused has never been fully measured. And the question this case forces us to ask, how many other crime labs are operating on trust alone with no real oversight? April 19th, 1989. A jogger is brutally attacked in Central Park. 5 teenagers, Antron McCrae, Kevin Richardson, Yusuf Salam, Raymond Santana, and Corey Wise, are arrested, interrogated for hours, and eventually confess. Here's what the forensic evidence actually showed. None of the 5 boys' DNA matched samples recovered from the victim. Not one. The hair analysis was inconclusive. The physical evidence didn't connect any of them to the crime. But the confessions, coerced from minors after marathon interrogations without adequate legal representation, were treated as more important than the science. The forensic evidence that contradicted the confessions was downplayed. Prosecutors pushed forward anyway. All 5 were convicted and spent between 6 and 13 years in prison. In 2002, Matias Reyes, a convicted serial rapist already in prison, confessed to the attack. His DNA matched the evidence from 1989. The convictions were vacated. The forensic evidence had been pointing to the truth the entire time. Investigators just chose not to listen to it. Every case we just covered has something in common. The evidence was there. The science could have led to the truth, but human failures, laziness, arrogance, bias, outright fraud got in the way. And these aren't ancient history. Crime labs are still being audited and shut down. Wrongful convictions are still being overturned. The CSI effect makes juries trust forensics like gospel. But the reality is messier, more fragile, and more dependent on the people doing the work than most of us want to admit. If this one hit different for you, drop a comment and tell me which case shocked you the most. And if you want to go deeper on any of these, I'm thinking a full deep dive on Fred Zain could be its own video. Let me know. Hit subscribe if you're not already. I put out videos like this every week, and the next one is going to make you question everything you think you know about lie detector tests. See you then.